thanks for the opportunity to talk about this business. I'll hop straight into showing my screen. Let me know if this works. Yeah, I think the screen should be up now. I work for e-commerce brokers, and I am representing Skywalker.com.au. Now, this is a brand that it is very different to the brands we've talked about so far. It's a very mainstream, I guess, e-commerce brand. It's very well put together. It's very well rounded, and over the last 3 years, it's been very stable. Now, it's in an interesting niche because a lot of people might think of the hoverboard niche as a fad, but we'll get into that a bit later. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so the brand, like I mentioned, is about 3 years old. It's one of Australia's most trusted and largest online sellers of self-balancing scooters, electric skateboards, and hoverboards. So it's well-rounded in the electric skateboard kind of niche there. So it's well diversified in terms of its marketing. It has very automated operations with just one employee, and the logistics are extremely simplified. But we'll get into that in the next few slides. So the big questions around this business, of course, are always about the key financials. So the first thing is, in just 2019, there was about 700K in revenue. Now, if you look at the graph at the bottom there, you'll see that each year that's gone by, there's very similar trends. It is definitely a Q4 business. That's always its biggest quarter of the year. And I mean, if you look at this business compared to most e-commerce businesses, it's very similar in volume each year in terms of sales. So that does go against the fad, or what people think is a fad for this niche. So it's comparatively extremely stable compared to most niches. So back to the financials. So the net profit is roughly 200K, and that's just from 2019. The net profit margin does stay around usually 25%. In 2019, that was an average of 30%. So again, in 2019, it was similar results in terms of sale volume, in terms of when the sales came in. So Q4, of course, was huge. And yeah, so in 2019, actually grew about 25-30% compared to 2018. So not only is the business extremely consistent, it is growing as well. So traffic and data. So one of the biggest benefits of, if any buyer looking to buy this business, is that the seller in this case is someone who owns multiple 7- and 8-figure brands and has been in the e-commerce business and marketing business for many, many years now. So he's put together this brand, and because of his large portfolio, he wants to move his focus and his resources to those other brands. And that is basically a result of his goals for the year. So for this business, it's basically a well-rounded business that has great channels in terms of marketing. It's very well-rounded. It's not relying on just one source, and because of that, as you can see, it's got a reasonably well diversified channels in terms of traffic sources. AOV is also extremely healthy. It's $347 as of December 2019. Site conversion rate of about 1.7%, also very impressive. And location. So this is an Australian-based business. It is largely selling to Australians, or almost entirely, and that is one of the opportunities for a buyer. So expanding across into the US, into Europe, but we'll get to that in the later slide. So yeah, as I mentioned, the marketing operations are very well rounded. So the 3 pillars of marketing in this business is Facebook ads, Google AdWords, and SEO. And the data on that, if for any buyer looking to do some due diligence on that, is available. So we can show you that. And as I mentioned, operations are extremely well automated, and that's a result of this seller being, like I mentioned, very experienced in the space. His knowledge across all the brands and across the years that he's been operating are available to this buyer in this purchase. So one VA in the Philippines manages all operations in terms of monitoring marketing campaigns, customer service, and fulfillment. So extremely automated, extremely light touch for the owner. The seller himself basically spends no time in the business. as the employee manages most of that buy opportunity. So yeah, like I mentioned, the first thing for any buyer looking to buy this business, first step would probably be to expand overseas. The business has a great hold on the Australian market, and as you can see, has great financials in the Australian market. But the US, of course, is a bigger market, and that's the first place anyone should go. And then, of course, there's Europe and so on. So this is the biggest opportunity for this business. It is well-rounded in terms of marketing and operations and so on, but expanding the target market of its customer base is the first step, essentially. And the second step would be to launch new products. Now, the site has a couple of products there, and it's not, a one product store. It has many products there. However, launching, many new products is an option, and I think would be a good option. So big question is maybe why hasn't this all been bought sooner? So like I mentioned, some people think of the hoverboard niche as a fad, the electric scooter niche as a fad, but the reality is this fad has been around for over 10 years now. In terms of electric scooters, electric skateboards, hoverboards, it's something that has exploded over the last few years, and it's actually been quite stable. And in recent times, in most cities around the world, you'll see, a few electric scooters just, whether you're on the roads or you're heading to work, you'll see this niche slowly building up over time. So although people think that, the data suggests otherwise, and the financials of the business, as we saw, were very contrary to that. It's actually extremely stable, more stable than most businesses in some evergreen niches. So that fad, I don't think is true. And I would suggest is probably almost a good thing for someone who does want to delve deeper into the statistics, into the trends and so on, as this might be something most people might overlook because they kind of take that of it being a fad. So even looking at Google Trends here, so search trend for an electric scooter over the past few years has been increasing. Same for electric skateboard has been steadily increasing, and here we can also go back one. You can also see it's been steady down here. So, like I mentioned, I don't believe the whole fad thing, but that is something that people take into consideration when they don't delve deeper into some stuff. But yeah, that's essentially why it hasn't been sold so far. Such a strong business. So the valuation is about $180,000 USD plus around $100,000 of stock, which is always fluctuating. But yeah, that's essentially the Skywalker business.
Thank you very much, George. Really comprehensive presentation. I appreciate that. Send on our congratulations to the owner of the business. It's a very, very high average order value. Most e-commerce companies globally would kill for an AOV of, I think you said, $347. Is there any feedback on the product, customer reviews and ratings? You mentioned that there's, I think it was a 17% return rate, 17% return visitor rate. So that's obviously very high for an e-commerce business. So they're doing something right. Do you have any sense of how customers are responding to the product on receipt and after usage? So customer reviews and ratings.
No, the product is extremely well received. There's a ton of like 5-star reviews on the site, on review sites and so on. A few years back, I think it was about 2 years ago, it actually got some mainstream media coverage on the news and so on as being when the whole hoverboard scene kind of blew up. That was the kind of brand that caught the news and went mainstream in Australia. So that's it's always been the safer brand, especially in Australia. There might be some larger brands, but it's always been the safe brand that people are like, look, it's a solid product, it's safe. This is a good brand. And the customer return rate has always been extremely high, and you couple that with an AOV so high, it's like you said, it's a strong business.
Okay, and how does the business specifically, in its core selling market being Australia, how does it compare against the competitive set for price as well as for, I guess, revenue and sell-through?
Yeah, so the business is, look, it's competitive. It's in the top players in Australia. However, where it is stronger than most is the fact that, like I mentioned, the marketing is well-rounded and is done by one of the best in the business, in my opinion. He's someone who has a lot of other businesses in other niches, so he's able to gather the best marketing tactics that most players aren't able to do in Australia, because most people who have a business this large kind of just stay in the one niche. On top of that, I doubt anybody has such automated systems and is so simplified in terms of the logistics and operations of the business. So in terms of that, that's probably what most aren't doing in the niche in terms of other players in Australia.
Okay, I'm seeing a great question here from Alexander Wolf online. I'll try to interpret that a little bit. So it's about the seasonality of the business. And the question, I guess, relates to maybe it's the revenue distribution. Is that 55% of annual revenue occurs in Q4? Is that about right, George?
Look, it is about right. And yeah, that's just a part of the business. So everyone in this niche would experience the same thing. And in terms of I think it was in December last year, there was something like 400K made Aussie dollars, so probably like 300K USD or just under that. So a crazy amount is of course made in Q4, and that is a part of being in this niche. However, even in January so far, there's been roughly 60 grand Aussie, so that's probably about 35, 40 grand USD made in one of the lower months. So yeah, you're definitely right in terms of the distribution, but that's part of the niche.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, George. Really comprehensive presentation. Appreciate that. Looks like a good business, and look forward to learning a bit more about the operational efficiencies that they've got in place. So we'll take some questions from the buyers offline and get those across to you.